all right tonight? You good? Well, we might change that. So here's the thing. People who know about my work, and I know most of y'all do, or you wouldn't be here since you weren't bribed. You're here of your own volition. You probably have some recognition of the fact that I'm not known for my sunny optimism. This is an understatement of somewhat biblical proportions, but there it is. I'm not cynical. I'm trying not to be at least. But I'm not known for my rosy disposition about the state of the world, particularly the state of this country. So in spite of that, however, in spite of the fact that that's not my normal default position, I am trying, I really am trying, to be as optimistic as I can be and tease out the positives out of a moment in our history as a country and as a people that is quite problematic, again, to say the least, again, an understatement of somewhat biblical proportions. So for the last year at least, I've been trying to figure out what's the silver lining in this year. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And not because this year is particularly unique in a lot of ways, but because the obviousness with which we have to confront the problems of our country are perhaps clearer now. And so for about a year, I've been trying to figure out, how do I spin this in a way that doesn't create total cynicism in my own children, who are 16 and 14, and in young people to whom I speak all around the country. And here's what I've come up with, and I gotta be honest, I don't even know how strong this is. To be honest, I'm not even sure I believe my bullshit, okay? I could be completely naive about this, but I'm gonna throw it out there, and you can determine if it makes any sense. But here's the best I can do in this moment. The silver lining in the otherwise incredibly problematic storm clouds of the current moment in American history. And in order to give you the silver lining, I have to back up for just a second and make it obvious with it. For the last 8 years, those of us who do racial justice work and racial equity work have been on a particular mission where we had one job, to be honest. This was our job. For the last 8 years of the presidency of Barack Obama, our job as anti-racist was to actually convince white people that racism was still a thing. That was our gig for 8 years, because a lot of white folks were like, oh my God, it's so cool. Racism is over. Because that black guy got elected and I totally voted for him. Which, first of all, no, you didn't, because the majority of white people never voted for Barack Obama. But, oh my God, it's so cool. Racism is over. Which I'm sure the women in the room will recall that day in 1988 when patriarchy was smashed in Pakistan. And you didn't even let me finish the line. Don't bite the bars before I finish them, please. When patriarchy was smashed in Pakistan, because Benazir Bhutto, a woman, was elected head of state, right, in Pakistan. You do remember that woman, right? All of you were thinking, holy hell, I need to move to Pakistan because things are good for women. They have a woman who's the head of state, right? Nobody did that. Even my child at the time, who didn't even exist and wouldn't exist for another 13 years, knew, even 13 years before her birth, the election of a woman in Pakistan didn't mean anything about the eradication of male supremacy and domination in Pakistan. But in this country, that's what we assumed about Barack Obama. White folks were like, oh my God, I'm so glad about it. So for 8 years, that was our gig. Trying to just hold white folks' hands, my people, and convince them that racism was really a thing. Now, however exhausting that bullshit was for me, I can't even fathom how exhausting that was for the black and brown folks in this country. We had to go back to reality 101 with some white folks, right? And yet that was the game. So but I told you I was trying to tease the positive out of the negative. So here comes the positive. Like I said, I'm not saying this is persuasive. I'm just giving you the best I got. Trying to find the silver lining. The good news is, for the last 8 years, we've been having to hold people's hand and prove that racism was a real thing. The good news is, I guess we don't have to do that shit anymore. Yeah, like I said, it's not real persuasive because If the best evidence you have that things are good is the fact that things are more blatant now, if the best evidence you have that things are good is that middle school children are taunting other middle school children who happen to be Latinx with chants of build the wall, if the best evidence you have that things are better is that things are blatant because white nationalists and neo-Nazis and white supremacists are running over people in Charlottesville, the best evidence you have that things are better because they're more blatant and therefore more obvious is that we have multiple hate crimes, murders happening in New York and in College Park, Maryland, and all across this country, in Kansas. And you've got a dude walking into the Walmart in Thornton, which is how far from here? Not far. And shooting up Latinx folks. They didn't even report that the first 3 days after the crime. They didn't even tell you that he targeted Latinx folks and actually shot them on purpose and had a history of abusing Latinx folks in his apartment complex, wherever the hell it was he lived. And he was actually openly hostile to them. They didn't tell you that. In between the dude in New York who happens to be Muslim and ran over folks with his truck, we heard about that. And we ascribe that to his religion. This dude, Scott Ostrom, they tell you finally in the reports, had stacks of Bibles in his house. No furniture, but stacks of Bibles. A futon and a bunch of Bibles. Now, if it was a stack of Qurans, I have a feeling that we've been having a different conversation in this country about Scott Ostrom. But you can have a stack of Bibles and be a white man and go and shoot Latinx folks, and they don't call it a hate crime, let alone an act of terrorism. See, that's the country in which we live, and that is not even in my notes, but it needed to be said. And so, it's not really a silver lining, is it? Because if the silver lining is things are more blatant now, and now we can't really ignore it, but people have to die in order for us to not ignore it, that's not really progress. But at least it does tell us one thing. If you can't see it now, you're never going to see it. And I can't waste my time on you. And I can't bother with trying to convert you. At some point, you're going to have your own come to Jesus moment before you realize the evidence right in front of you that black and brown folks have been trying to tell all of us in the white community forever and that we've been ignoring. Because if you cannot see it now, you are not going to see it. And the rest of us have to move on without you and build a movement without you. And you'll either join up or you won't. You'll either figure it out or you won't. But there comes a point where we cannot pander to those who can't even see the obviousness in front of them. There comes a point where we have to treat people like adults and tell them to act like such and not as children, despite their age, and act as though we have an obligation to show them the light. The light is real clear for those who are willing to open their eyes, so we just have to do our work. But here's what really concerns me. This is actually a bigger concern than all of that which I just said. I'm really concerned that when we have this resurgence of all go around and we can see, it makes it especially easy for the rest of us in the white community. I don't mean racist overtly, I don't mean the white supremacists, I don't mean the neo-Nazis. I mean the nice white local folks, for what that's worth. And I've been white a long time, so let me assure you, it is worth nothing. It allows those of us who are nice white liberals to separate ourselves from those folks. Right? It allows us to claim distance from them. It allows us to say, thank God we're not like those people in Charlottesville. Thank God we're not like David Duke. We're not like Richard Spencer. We're not like Matt Heimbach. We're not like Andrew Anglin. We're not like those dudes in Charlottesville marching around with their tiki torches. Because, nothing says white supremacy like white boys walking around with oversized Polynesian candles trying to be badass. Nothing is more badass than that. And wearing polo shirts and khakis, because that's intimidating as hell. But see, we like to, and I just made fun of them because it was fun to do, but we don't need to separate ourselves from them. When white liberal and progressive people do that, we actually become part of the problem. Right? This idea that, oh my God, thank God we're not like them. Those are the racist white people, and we're the good white people. But here's what I know for a fact. David Duke and Richard Spencer And Matt Heimbach and Andrew Anglin and those boys in Charlottesville, I'll tell you what they're not to blame for. They might be to blame for the murder of Heather Heyer in Charlottesville, but I'll tell you what they're not to blame for. They're not to blame for the fact that right now the typical white family in America has 12 times the net worth of the typical black family in America. They're not to blame for that. They're not to blame for the fact that the typical white family has 10 times the net worth of the typical Latinx family. They're not to blame for that. That's about history and the accumulated advantage of some and the disadvantage of others. And David Duke wasn't in a position to make that happen. Richard Spencer wasn't in a position to make that happen. They're not to blame for the fact that black households headed by college graduates have less wealth on average by about 1/3 than white households headed by a high school dropout. Let me repeat that. That black households headed by a college graduate have 1/3 less wealth than white households headed by somebody that didn't even finish 12th grade. So tell me again the piece about how education is the great equalizer, please. And how if black folks just valued education enough and did what they were supposed to do and played by the rules, they would be at the same level as white people. Tell me that again while you reflect on that data, which nobody's told you until tonight. Nobody running for office, nobody asking for your vote has told you that. But that's the truth. And David Duke didn't do it. Richard Spencer didn't do it. Matt Heimbach didn't do it. Andrew Anglin didn't do it. The Klan didn't do it. They're not to blame for the fact that right now, unarmed black folks, 3.2 times more likely than unarmed white folks to be shot by police, even when they are not aggressing against the officers. That's not David Duke. He didn't have a badge and a gun. It's not Richard Spencer. He doesn't have a badge and a gun. That's just average, everyday white folks on police forces around this country, and black folks unarmed, 3.2 times more likely to be shot by police than white folks. See, that's on us. It's not on them. It's on us because we've remained silent in the face of that black death and that brown death. We've remained silent. We haven't done enough. We haven't said enough. We like to put it on Nazis, though, because we're not Nazis. Thank God we're not Nazis. We're smart enough to not vote for Nazis. If the best thing you can say for yourself is that you know better than to vote for Nazis, you need to start over. The best thing that we can say about ourselves is that we're good enough not to be white nationalists marching with tiki torches in Charlottesville defending Confederate statues. We need to start over again because these problems are systemic and they got nothing to do with Nazis. They have to do with us. They have to do with our neighbors. They have to do with our family. They have to do with our colleagues and our friends and people that we know and live around. It might have to do with us. David Duke and Richard Spencer not to blame for the fact that right now, black folks are 13% drug users, but 37% of people arrested, incarcerated for a drug offense. That's not on David Duke. And not to blame for the fact that right now in the state of Colorado, some white folks get rich. Real rich. Selling the same product on the same block. On the same block that black and brown folks were selling the same product on 10 years ago, and they're still doing time right now in prisons in this state. David Duke didn't cause that. But you got some white weed millionaires making money selling the same product and doing it with like tasting notes and shit. Why the hell do you need tasting notes with your weed? What the hell? Why you like notes of apricot and shit? Like, why can't you just smoke weed? Like, just don't tell me what kind of cheese to pair my weed with. I don't need to pair weed with cheese. I got Cheetos. That's all I need to pair my weed with. How the hell did white people gentrify weed? Like, it's bad enough you gentrify the neighborhood, then you just like gentrify the product. You're like, watch this. And that's not in the notes either, but I mean, honest to God, right? So David Duke's not to blame for that disparity. David Duke's not to blame for any of that. Richard Spencer's not to blame for any of I didn't need any of that data, by the way, that I just shared with you to tell me that the war on drugs wasn't about drugs. I could have told you that.